Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Dow. I'm the Main Street Director for the City of Denison, and we are going to talk D3, which we call it. It's Designing Downtown Denison, and it's our Streetscape project. We're designing public spaces, and we're having a conversation today with Chris Lambka of Lambka and Associates, and he is the project designer. Chris, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing great.
Well, all right, let's start from the beginning. And can you believe it's almost been 10 years?
No, that's incredible.
I
Yeah.
know. Like your kids were a whole
I didn't
different
even have
age.
one at the time. Yeah, I've got a 14-year-old now and a 7-year-old. So one of them wasn't even born
Yeah,
when we started.
yeah.
Mhm.
And you've been coming to Denison since 2016. And so let's talk about some of those very first meetings that we had when you were with Tool Design,
Mhm.
and we specifically hired Tool Design because of their expertise. So why don't you tell about the team that
Mhm.
that came?
Absolutely. Well, we were led by Cindy Zerger, and then Ian Lockwood was on the team as well as Ken Ray. And again, that was with Tool Design at the time. And our expertise really play into designing spaces for people, public spaces where people want to gather. We want to treat Main Street as if it was a linear park that cars are on, people are on, bicycles are on. And again, just really trying to create an atmosphere that's fitting for each of the communities that we work in.
So tell a little bit about the expertise of the individuals because they all had public input
Mhm.
expertise, but like Ian was a specialist in traffic design, maybe. And so tell
Right.
about that, each
Absolutely.
one.
But yeah, so Ian Lockwood, I have learned a lot from him. He is an active transportation designer, an engineer that is very forward thinking, but really actually bringing us back to the days when we didn't have cars. So
Right.
we've only actually had cars for 110 years
Yeah.
or so, and but we've had streets for 2 or 3 thousand. Roman streets have been around for 2 or 3 thousand years now.
And he's
Um,
he's a leader in his field, right?
Absolutely, across the
The
globe,
globe. Yeah.
essentially. Yes, he's amazing, and really helps you think outside of the box, but safely. So it's not like we're just throwing out every rule book. He really guides us into that, and really helps us think about moving, people and creating spaces that are still safe and functional, but really create that sense of place. Cindy Zerger, she really developed what we call path as place. And again, that's about the making sure that the actually driving, traveling, walking to your destination is just as enjoyable as the destination that you're trying to reach. Um, so she is great at creating urban environments where people want to gather, whether that's in front of a store in a cafe seating, at the corner of an intersection, creating a large gathering space, seating areas, but also pocket parks that infiltrate into that, so you get some respite and reprieve from the day-to-day grind, or the traffic noise. And then Ken Ray is an expert bicyclist and plantsman, and he really brought in some of the landscape culture, and then making sure that we're not focused on just people and just cars, but also brings in that bicyclist element
Yeah.
as another designer.
You have some expertise, right? You like water features.
I do. I love water features. So one of the things that we get to do is just design for people,
Yeah.
and that's, we all walk, we all drive a car, we all, travel to our destinations. And when we get there, we all want to enjoy the space that we're in. And so, one of the things I do love is water and water features. It's one of those great attractors of people of all
Hmm.
ages.
Hmm.
And so, that and fire, but we're not going to have fire in downtown. But those natural elements really attract people
Yeah.
and want to bring them to gather. And so again, just the whole team that came together for the original project, it really was trying to design a space that was for people of all ages and abilities, whether they're walking, driving, trying to get to the destination, and again, just making it an environment that people want to be in.
So you said abilities. Let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about the ADA accessibility and that all abilities.
Sure. So one of the biggest goals that we came out of it, because we did during the first initial master planning stage, we had several public meetings. And in that, people said, we want to be able to get everywhere easily, make sure that it's accessible for everyone, regardless of their ability. But then also keeping the brick streets and keeping that heritage and really telling our story as Denison. How do we do that through a streetscape? One of the biggest things, like we mentioned, is that we wanted people of all ages and abilities to have access. So the design of Main Street is actually what we call a flush street. So there are no traditional curbs that you have to step up onto a sidewalk, from the parking or from the street level, and really tried to make it to where, again, it's accessible for everyone. They don't have to go to an ADA ramp in order to get to the front of the store. And then many of the buildings, a handful, don't have an ADA access into their storefront. And so another goal is to make sure that every building and door that fronts Main Street is ADA accessible.
Yeah, that was really important to us, I know. And so that's a premier part of the project. So you mentioned the public input, and I want to dive deep into that really, because I feel like we really did a great job. Our community, as we did a great job of engaging and providing that input. So you called them charrettes, and that was a model that Tool used.
Yes.
And so you brought those 4 people that we talked about, you being one of them, and you came into town, and we met at the senior center here in Denison, and just you asked questions, and you had focus groups.
Yes.
And I remember some of those focus groups. We had an education, we had young people, we had maybe some school board members, we had pastors, we had shoppers, we had business owners, property owners, developers that might come into downtown. We had people that had limited access involved. And so I can't think of any other groups, but we tried to get everything. And for 4 days, you met with those groups.
Yes.
You want to tell a little bit about anything of that process?
Yeah. Well, to be, remembering back, I think we had over 300 plus touch points with individuals within your community over that 4 days. So we did 2 different workshops or charrettes, and the first one was just boots on the ground, having conversations with your community just to try and understand the community so that the design fit with your community. We've been in communities of 100,000 plus people in the same type of environment and have had 10 people show up. For a community your size, you really start to understand the heart and passion that everybody has for this community, and they want it to succeed and be successful, but also be uniquely Denison.
Right. Yeah, I think that sums it up very well. And I was really proud of the public input part of it. So then that was in October of 2016, and then in November of 2016, you came back. and presented. You presented some things before you left the first time, but then you presented a refined model. You want to just talk
So
about
we
anything?
always try to have starter ideas as we're talking to the community, and in those focus groups. Some of us will be, drawing out ideas, and I know that we had a few ideas for some of the pocket parks and Heritage Park, and then the top of the town park, which is the 700 block. We just kind of dubbed it top of the town park
Right.
for the time being, and then did a few cross sections of different street ideas there. And then when we came back, that was really more design heavy. So we always had an open studio to where the public could drop in anytime, or maybe if we missed someone that was out of town, we could have a one-on-one conversation with those individuals. Um, but that's really where we get into the meat of it. So for 4 days, we were drawing on paper. This wasn't computerized at all. We did do a computer rendering, a visualization of what it could look like, but the rest of it was by hand, and it was actually there the last night when we presented it, and we had a meeting, and there was probably 100+ people there at
Yeah.
the senior center. It was packed out, very well attended, to hear the team's desire and thought process of what we came up with for your Main Street, which and is very close to what we came up with. There's some things
Right.
that have changed, over time, and we can talk about those when you want to. But so we had that meeting that Thursday night in November, and then went from there.
Yeah. Our your team came from different parts of the country. And so I think Cindy was from Minneapolis, and
Yep.
then from there she's gone to California.
California.
But you came from
South
South
Carolina.
Carolina, and Ken was from maybe
Yep.
DC, and then Ian from Florida.
Yes, ma'am.
And so it's like you were gathering, you had work time, but as you said, you let people come in on you, and you just met with them and listened to their ideas. And so it is uniquely Denison. Like there is, I can't stress enough how much you studied, and I want you to tell me a little bit about that, all the studying you did that goes into this design. So it's not just like, okay, you sit down at the computer and draw out something.
Right.
You put a lot of studying into it.
Absolutely. So we always look at precedents and different models, not only in the U.S. but also globally. There's several projects in Australia and in the United Kingdom, and then here locally, that we look at. And so that some of these concepts, the flush street, are actually what we ended up dubbing it a flush festival street, is how we pitched it, just because of how many events that you have on your Main Street. And really after we've used it, no, we didn't coin the phrase, but I see it everywhere. Everybody's, oh, we got a festival street. It's like, well, we did it first. But yeah, so we always look at precedents, and we're always learning. So we look at what are great projects, and kind of pick them apart from an engineering and landscape architecture brain, and see what worked, what didn't, what we would tweak if we did. But we're always learning.
Yeah.
So I mean, someone may come and look at our Main Street here in Denison and be like, oh, well, what if you did this, or what if you did that? And you're always learning and perfecting, but you never kind of go into it in this, tunnel vision. I already know what I'm doing. We have to look to research precedents and safety, so
Yes.
we still look at your text dot standards and your City of Denison standards from a construction and geometry design of intersections. So there's a lot that goes into it. So we take the context of your community, Denison, international and national research, and then standards, and kind of meld them all together, and try and create a space that we think, again, fits your community, and then also complements the architecture. I mean, the wonderful architecture that y'all have up and down Main Street. We want to make sure the street actually complements instead of the buildings trying to pull all
Right.
the weight.
Yeah, that is something we're very fortunate. I think, those that are living here or from here, it's just what we've always known.
Right.
But people that come into the community are really impressed by the size and scale of the buildings and the beauty of the buildings. And so that's their first impression. Their second, and what really hooks them, is when they meet the business owners. But they have a very strong first impression, and so that's just what we have here in Denison, and we're really proud of it. So let's, even you studied a lot of the plant material. Talk about that.
Yes. So obviously, as you mentioned, we all came in from different areas across the country. Fortunately, where I'm at in South Carolina, we're actually in the same growing zone. We're actually on the same parallel. That doesn't mean the same things grow here, even though that plant label, at Lowe's says it will, it doesn't. So we did a lot of research in North Central Texas, all over Dallas, Fort Worth, here in Denison, looking at what grows, even up into Oklahoma, because your soil line actually goes up into Oklahoma here, being on the Red River, and really did a lot of research there. Talked to Texas A&M extension agents about the trees that may do best here, and then talked to a lot of nurserymen and tree farms. And it just so happened that some of our trees come from a very well-known tree farm in Georgia, and they've been sending a lot of trees out here to the Metroplex area as well as up to Oklahoma City, and are doing very well. So we looked at those case studies with their trees, because they actually have from when they first went in, and they routinely go back and look about 5 or 6 years and show the growth comparison and how they're doing. So there was some extensive research, and a couple other tool design members. Bonnie Moser, she was a landscape architect working on this, as well as Eric Childs, really helping us nail that down, and talking to the extension agents in Sherman, just so that we try. You get one shot to get it right. You want to make sure that you're doing the best you can.
Right. Yeah, we've learned as the project's gone along, and it's not perfect, but we put studying into it and have an educated guess for what's going to work here in Denison. We've made some adjustments, like we've moved the curb stops back a foot, and done some different things, but we've it's an educated process.
That's right.
And not just you come into town and it worked in New York City, so it's going to work in Denison, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's move on. You've designed the project, and so we started phase 1, and I can't think of anything. Phase 1 is unique in that you mentioned the top of the town park, which is at the 700 block of Main. Everything drains downhill into Houston in phase 1. And so that drainage is what had to be addressed there. And so that was the unique part of it. And it was down by the Katy Depot and the start of our project. And, then we moved to phase 2. And at this point, you are Chris Lambka and Associates, no longer working with Tool, but before they left town the second time, they had a whole 8-block area of what the concept was of the plan. So I think we've carried that forward for the most part. But do you want to just talk about some of the other features that we have in our design?
In phase 2?
Either one. You can start with phase 1. I really want to talk about Heritage Park, but do all the rest before we get to Heritage Park.
Sure. So in phase one, I think it's important to note that at each milestone of the design, so we usually have 30%, 60%, 90%,
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
At each one of those milestones, we actually had a town hall meeting that was open to the public, and we presented what the plan was. And there was in the first phase, because we're just getting it into the landscape architecture, hard lines of engineering at that time, there was a lot of change from 30% to 60% based on public feedback, and then 60% to 90%. So at one point we had a different angle of parking, and we changed that around pretty quickly. And at one point in the design, the original design, we had a bike lane that went all the way through Main Street, and then decided that that would be better served on Chestnut or Woodard, not on Main, because the desire for Main Street is that it's a slow street. It was a flush festival street, but that it's a slow street where people feel comfortable just riding their bike in the street. And so instead of having a dedicated bike facility in your community, in other communities it may work, but in your community, it was very much so that we wanted to have it as a slow street. And one of the other changes from the conceptual plan that we finished back in November of 2016 was that instead of having parallel parking on one side and angled on the other and alternating that as we went up the street, we really needed to maximize the parking that we could, and that was something that the business owners and community really wanted. And so we were able to make that change for them. And then with every project, there's some budget constraints. So we had an idea of these dancing water featured fountains that would go at one of our bookends in phase one, which that is located at Rusk in Maine. And that ended up needing to be toned down a little bit. But we were able to create a design I feel like now actually speaks more to Denison, because we were able to create 4 unique plazas to Denison, each one named for something that happened or represents historical elements here, Railroad Plaza, Sister City Plaza, Eisenhower Plaza. And we were able to also incorporate fountains that tell some of your history there. So we didn't have to lose the water features altogether. We just had to make some adjustments and redesign it. And again, I think it actually turned out better than our original intent, because the original intent, honestly, you probably could have put it on any street corner in America and it looked good. And now we're more, we're telling Denison's story in one of our bookend intersections.
Yeah. So we'll have another bookend on Fannin.
Right.
And that's already designed. It's in phase 2, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So the bookend, a bookend, really what we wanted to do is you in a downtown, you always kind of build in, and so you have more design detail as you get to the heart of your downtown. Well, your heart is Heritage Park. That's where most of our events and festivals are. That's where most of the community gathers, and it's almost centrally located. Mm-hmm. And so what we decided to do is treat Rusk and Maine and Fannin and Maine as our 2 bookends. And you're right, we designed 2 additional fountains into the design of the Fannin intersection. Those fountains, the first one is actually on the south side, and it's going to be what we're calling the Walk of Fame fountain. And so with that, we wanted to kind of bring in a model of Hollywood and be able to celebrate some of the historical figures within Denison that maybe they were a famous actor, or obviously you have the president that was born here, and any NFL players, and you've got a lot of athletes that have come from here. And so we're really trying to celebrate again the history and significance that Denison has, not only here in Texas but also throughout the country, the impact that they have. And then on the other side of the street, the northern side, we have Leadership Plaza. And so we really want to celebrate the governmental leaders, council, mayors, um, administrators, school board, anybody that's a leader, but also encourage other people to step up and become leaders, from your community. And our third plaza that was named was the Perrin Air Force Base, and its significance in our world wars, as training pilots for our military.
And even in NASA, it's trained some astronauts.
Yeah,
So
there you go. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's really impressive all the thoughts that you put into this. Um, let's talk a little bit about the Heritage Park now. As the center of the district and event space specifically, you wanted to define that area. And so you can tell about some of the features and how you defined it and how that will transition from, let's say, on Fridays, at 4 o'clock to business district, and then at 7 o'clock it may be a concert area that's closed off to vehicular traffic.
Absolutely. Well, we did not differ too much from the original concept. Cindy Zerger was instrumental in that original concept that featured a roundhouse design. Denison would not be Denison without the railroad. So the Katy Railroad came through, and Denison was founded because of that. And what we wanted to do was kind of honor your railroad history in creating a roundhouse design. And a roundhouse is basically where the locomotive comes in. It's a circular platform, and then the platform rotates and goes into a building where they would work on all the locomotives out of the sun and the elements, so they could work on it to get it back up to speed as quickly as possible. And so that very much has stayed true. The original concept had a lot more hardscape in it, and it was asked that we kind of revisit that so that we could implement a little bit more softscape, landscape, and more of a formal lawn, so that people could throw frisbee or play ball, or just kind of lay in the grass instead of on pavement. So we carried that theme through. So that the new design, we actually went through two different iterations of design. One moved the stage, and the other left it in its same orientation. And so the one that we went with was the one that maintains its current orientation. And like we said, it features a large grass circular lawn that represents where the roundhouse would have been. We also added a support building to the stage, which houses a green room for your performers. Also some storage, and then AV and IT. But it also is round. It's curved and mirrors what a roundhouse would have looked like. So we took some historical photos of the two roundhouses that Denison had, just because of the importance that Denison was from the railroad community. It actually had two, one very close to the site of Heritage Park, and one outside of downtown district, over closer to the viaduct. And looked at those images and tried to implement some of that architecture into the plan. We then were asked to add a little bit more shade to the design. Again, the community was asking for some more shade, and so what we ended up doing is incorporating some more trees. And then it was asked again, well, trees take a while to grow, which that's true. And so what we ended up doing was adding in a shade and swing structure that have some light columns attached to it, so that we could provide some much needed southern, southwestern exposure sun shade elements into the park. It's also round, so that we keep that feel all the way through. And we have some really neat elements that aren't out there right now, and those are We have 14 different light columns that also mirror that roundhouse. We got the inspiration for the light columns actually from the Red River Bridge, and studied that. And so you're going to see a lot of those elements in there. We're going to keep them the same color. They're not going to be, the burnt orange rust color that are out there. So it's going to be the same color theme that we have for all of our light poles and furnishings out there. But one of the things that is different right now that stands out to everybody is the paving pattern. Mm-hmm. And what we wanted to do was allow you to close off the street like you do so often in your during your events. But we wanted to create a space that felt like it fit into Heritage Park more so than it did Main Street during an event, but then also continued to feel like your Main Street when there wasn't an event. And so we did a lot of research and decided to use a shared street model. And a shared street really prioritizes pedestrians over motorists. You see a paving pattern that is very similar from building face into the park, and it goes all the way across the street. We don't want to have that differentiation as much pronounced as it is on your Main Street where you have the red brick and the concrete sidewalls. We want it to be very free flowing. And so there's subtle differences in it. You have a smaller paver where the motorists are to be, so the travel lanes, the parking area, and then you get a little bit larger format paver as you're in the primarily pedestrian area. So there's visual cues to help people know. A shared street is actually void of all of those, so everyone kind of mixes. Well, we had to take that model, which is very European, right, and create an American version of a shared street. And so the American version of a shared street, and I made that term up, so that's just what I'm calling it right now. We really have to, show motorists where to go. We have to put in the parking stripes. We have to, change those variations of sizes to really trying to give visual cues there. But it very much is going to resemble a shared street that you would see in Europe, in Asia. There's a bunch in Australia as well. So we looked at several examples across the country, but really the globe. There's not many in America. And so we looked at New Road in Brighton in the UK. We also looked at Exhibition Row in London, and then Ford Street in Auckland, New Zealand. So those were our three primary shared streets, and tried to take elements and study those and create, again, more of an American version where we still have a lot of the traditional, we've got the curb that continues all the way through. We've got the striping that continues all the way through. But you will notice that there's not a center line stripe, and that is very intentional. Most of the rest of our street does have a center line, but we really wanted it to, again, feel open to where when you close that street off, that it feels like it's a part of Heritage Park. The reason for the no centerline stripe is that it allows a little bit more flexibility in driving. So when you don't have oncoming traffic, you can drive a little bit more into the center, and you're away from the pedestrians more. You're away from the vehicles that may be backing out of a parking space. But then it's just like any other residential street. I would say maybe 60-70% of the streets in Denison don't have a centerline stripe. You go 2 blocks off of Main Street, and you get into the residential area, and there's no centerline stripe. So it's not that much different than traditional neighborhood or residential street. But it is purposeful. We want people to slow down. We want you to drive in maybe 10 miles an hour in that section. What you will also notice is that in our transition area that you see in the 300 block from the red brick to the gray brick is a large concrete band. We designed that specifically to where you can take the bollards that you'll see at the intersection of Main Street and Burnett, actually remove those and put those bollards into that separating band so that you can close off the street. So we're trying to help you not have to do a bunch more work, and kind of reuse. That way you don't have bollards that are sitting in a storage facility. So really, when it comes time, like you mentioned, Friday at 5 o'clock, you can have, your crew pull up those bollards, put them in place, and you're ready for an event, just like that. And we anticipate being able to fit, 3 to 4,000 individuals in that whole area. We've done some studies based on standing, seating, or with a blanket, as a family, and we think we can get about 3,000 or 4,000 individuals in this area that will be carved out by those gray pavers and Heritage Park.
And then there's the ribbon curb you mentioned that's separating the two.
Right. Yes. And you'll see once we get over to the 400 block, just into it, maybe 200-300 feet beyond the intersection there at Burnett, that one will be a radial, and that radius follows the same radius of the center formal lawn. So all of those angles and radii play off of each other. And then another element to create more of an outdoor dining environment in that area is we've spaced our trees a little bit closer together and actually pulled some more into the parking areas. Those aren't there yet. They are coming. And so once all of these vertical elements come into place, you'll really start seeing how it plays and works together. So it's hard to see it right now, but it's going to come together. And our final element in between the light columns, so we're actually going to have a few light columns north of Main along the in the gray brick area, and we'll actually have catenary lighting or string lighting that goes between those columns over Main Street.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in for sure.
Yeah.
It's been many years in the works. I'm really excited for Heritage Park and to be able to use it. Let's flip the coin a little bit and talk about the infrastructure underneath, because Denison downtown Denison had a couple of streetscapes, but not any infrastructure work. And so when water systems developed in Denison, that's what we were still, what still exists today. And so we're putting in water, sewer, and things like that. And the drainage, something that's interesting to me is the drainage for the project. And so tell about that.
Absolutely. So most of the infrastructure here in Denison until we started the D3 project was potentially over 100 years old. Now we'd find, clay pipes, or they would drill through rock and that would be the pipe. And there was a lot there that is just well over 100 years old. So one of the biggest components is everything below ground that we don't see, except for right now when they're digging up the street.
Right.
But we've redone all of the water, all of the sewer. I believe the gas company has come in behind our guys and put in some new gas in the alleyways. But then the drainage, you're right. So the drainage was a huge undertaking. As you mentioned earlier, the 700 block is really at the top, and everything drains down to the railroad, or really Houston. Some of the infrastructure down there, we both could walk side by side, not bending over in the pipe. It was huge. I've got some pictures of some people standing in it, construction guys, not just the public, just to give perspective to it. So it was a big undertaking, and one that I commend Denison for taking on, because you're now hopefully future proofing most of
Right.
it for the next couple of generations.
Right. We only want to do this once. We
That's
don't
right.
want
That is
our
right.
ancestors, well,
Hmm.
our you know, family to have to deal with that again in their
Absolutely.
lifetime.
Yeah.
But
And
something else.
you guys were so fortunate too. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You know, we've been you as a collective, the city has been pushing downtown living, lofts,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that has tripled probably since we started the project. And one of the biggest things is meeting new fire codes, and we're putting in
Yes.
fire suppression lines where necessary, which you did not have before.
Right.
So we're bringing you back up to code, and again trying to make sure we're good for a couple of generations.
Yeah, we I wanted to mention the fire suppression was another thing that we had added, and it's not that it's not up to code in some buildings because it
Hmm.
depends on the use,
Right.
but you can always use fire suppression, and now's the time to do it if you're ever going to do it. And so many of our property owners are taking advantage of it, but certainly the city is bringing it to the buildings
Hmm.
and making it as accessible for them,
Right.
which takes out a significant amount of cost for them.
Sure.
So that was another thing that is very good about our project. So right now we're in. You mentioned the underground construction. You can see that
Hmm.
in our 400 block, and the sidewalks are open. We've working with Piazza Construction, the contractor for it. They've done a tremendous job working with us. We have the sidewalks fenced off so you can access all of the sidewalks right now. And you can't drive in the 400 block, but you can certainly get there. We've
Hmm.
also worked with neighboring property owners to make it accessible for parking lots behind the buildings. So we've tried to do marketing efforts to encourage people to park behind the buildings, access the business through the alley. And, the Arts Council's worked with us on some art in the alleys and, private property owners. So that's something that we've also done to make it accessible.
Hmm.
The 300 block just opened up last week, and we have the tree wells kind of fenced off with some orange fence. You can walk between those. There's gaps between them so you can access the buildings, but you can drive on the 300 block. You can
Hmm.
park on the 300 block, and it's open to traffic. But you get a little bit of taste of what it's going to be like. Now, we didn't put the plants in because it's in the heat of the summer. So you
Right.
want to tell a little bit about that?
Sure. So the optimal time to plant your mature trees that we want to grow, and then also the landscaping, is between October and March. And right now is just definitely not the time. Being 100 degrees outside. Now there's a little bit of reprieve today, and hopefully in the weekend. But really, we want to try and follow the nurseryman's guide, and really try and stick to that schedule of the October March. So it's going to provide the optimal growing period for them to get some roots in the ground before we get that Texas sun back.
Yeah. And another thing that we want to mention is that we've worked on those parking lots. We named the parking lots, and so we've put on our social media and our website. If somebody is coming from the Metroplex or somewhere outside of Denison, we have free parking lots,
Mm-hmm.
and so they want to be sure and see which one's closest. And I can't think of anything else to add to it. I think that gives us a great overview of what the project's like. Do you have anything else you want to mention?
No, just I appreciate all the public involvement that we've had,
Yeah,
and the continued encouragement throughout the project, and always feeling welcome here in Denison when I come back into town.
yeah. Well, it's a great project, and we're proud of it. And So we wanted everybody to understand what is going on with D3 and what it's going to look like, the inspiration behind it. So hopefully that was informative, and we will see you downtown. Thank you.